Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you in front of the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory. My name is Sanja Iguman, and I'm the coordinator of the Laboratory for Theory, Creation, and Politics of Space. Today, we will talk about waterscape politics in urban contexts. At the beginning, I want to apologize in case something doesn't work or I get blocked or something like that, because today is a very special day in Serbia, in scientific community of Serbia, because it's a deadline for a huge program called Identity, and we are all applying for that program. Today, the deadline is at 3 o'clock, and it's a really particular day. So in the last days, we didn't have much sleep. So it's, of course, everything happens at the same time. So I apologize in advance. Before I present our dear speakers and guests, I just want to say a few words about waterfront developments that have become a dominant theme in urban regeneration globally when it comes to urban regeneration of cities, of course. So rivers represent a great resource for investment, both in cultural and natural sense. So indeed, residential areas close to river banks have always been attractive for citizens, for investors, and buyers. Due to the strong impact of some of these activities during the process of urbanization, urban rivers have become extremely anthropized spaces and quite often seriously endangered by the same process of anthropization, so that people and animals around them do not benefit from the river presence anymore, especially when they are extremely polluted. So today we're going to hear different perspectives of how problems that are numerous, that we will list at the beginning and the first part of the seminar, can be actually approached and possibly solved. So let me start chronologically. First, we will have a presentation by Jacqueline Azkovic. Welcome. She is a researcher and executive director of the Organization for Political Ecology, POLECOL, and an activist of the Right to Water initiative, by education political scientist with 10 years of experience in policy areas like environmental and nature protection, climate change, and just transition. The second speaker will be Dr. Elena Boglu, who has a PhD in theoretical physics, but don't worry, we're not going to speak about physics today. Not much, not at all. But also degrees in theater directing and cultural mediation and gender studies. Elena's research focuses on the anthropology of science, on the theory of complexity in social sciences, and on epistemological implications of process of knowledge construction in a multicultural, comparative, and qualitative perspective. She has been involved in the Anthropocene curriculum project since 2013. Her fields of applied research are anthropology of science, environmental anthropology, urban anthropology, sustainability, and climate change studies. She teaches cultural anthropology at the University of Bergamo, where we met. Neil Galloway, who is unfortunately online, is a doctor of environmental planning, director of postgraduate studies in planning in the School of the Natural and Built Environment of the Belfast Queen's University. He is a coordinator of a master program of planning and development and city planning and design programs. He previously worked as a chartered town planner for Belfast City Council and DOE, I apologize, Neil will correct me if I'm wrong, planning service. His current research interests include planning for inclusive places, critical heritage studies, and planning policy and practices. And last but not least, Professor Dr. Cheddo Maximovic is a doctor of civil engineering and a professor emeritus at Imperial College London. His basic research is in the applied fluid mechanics and hydraulics of the urban water infrastructure systems and flows. As one of the world's leading experts in the field of urban water, he made a key contribution to urban water becoming a new scientific discipline, first in the UK and Europe and then elsewhere. In the current decade, he has expanded his field of expertise and scientific activity to the interaction of urban water and green infrastructure as key elements of the so-called blue-green systems. So thank you very much for accepting the invitation and participating in this seminar. So let's not waste time on the chit-chat, and let's start. Jacqueline, can you start?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Sanya, and thank the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory for inviting me. No, it's okay. You can just...
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have a presentation because, as Sanya mentioned, I was a researcher for a couple of years, writing different policy papers and researching. And realizing after a couple of years doing that the effect of my work is not good enough, if there is any, because in Serbia the policymakers and decision makers don't listen and don't read the research, but define their decisions based on different interests. And in many cases, and as you will see in my speech, we have captured institutions who are not working for the citizens' good, and especially not for the nature good. And that is why me and my colleagues in the last 4 years decided to continue doing the research, continue to gather data and propose solutions, but to address them to the citizens. And in the last couple of years, we mostly work with the local communities, informing them, educating them, and mobilizing them to be active. And that is going good, I can say. We have more and more local initiatives and organizations fighting for the right to water. And that is why I don't have a presentation, and I will probably not have a very consistent speech. And
this is a presentation.
Yeah, but and I will try to be consistent and to give you as much as possible facts. So I will read a little bit. So sorry for that.
It's great that you're having photos. You just tell me if you want me to switch and come.
Yeah,
go back
you can just go like 10 seconds, 15, 40 seconds, whatever you want. For the people who are not in the water management or the environment, I think it's important to say that we are living a water crisis moment today for some time, but it gets worse, so it's important to say also today. And intuitively, people don't know that because 70% of the water surface is covered by water. But what people don't know is that only 2.5% of that water is clean water, fresh water. And then 1% of that water is available for use. So only 0.0007% is fresh water that can be used for drinking. And what is worse is that we are also living a climate change that is expanding, and now even this fresh water that is available is polluted and is stuck within the climate change. So, for example, what is important for you is that Serbia is in a place that is very affected by droughts, and on the other side, we have small periods of large rains or that then gets to floods. And all of this affects water management and especially availability of water for drinking. And that is why the first point that we always try to point out is that water needs to be managed integrated, and this is like a standard, world standard for water management. And why is that important for the water? It's because the water is a resource and a common good that is not only being used for drinking, but also for different usage that is concurrent among themselves. So you use water for energy production, you use water for agriculture, you use it for industry, and you can use only this small amount of the water. And that is why it's very important to have the institutions and planning that can get in line all of these interests, and also to preserve the water for the generations to come. United Nations defined integrated water management as a process that promotes the coordinated development and management of water, land, and related assets in order to maximize economic and social well-being in a fair way without compromising the sustainability of vital ecosystems. And it's very important, as I said, this first part, like talking about energy, agriculture, different sectors, it's very technical part of integrated water management. But what is also important and what is also international standard is to also include a social aspect of water management and water planning. So we need to encourage a democratic and participatory approach of water management. So we need to include citizens, and we also need to take into account vulnerable social groups like Roma population. We also need to take into account gender mainstreaming in water management. So this is like the international standard. And unfortunately, all of these points are not working in Serbia. On paper, when we read the law on water management, the first sentence says that the water is a common good and it cannot be privatized, and it proclaims that Serbia bases its water management on an integrated approach. But what we can see in reality is that the water management is completely fragmented through different institutions that, because of our political culture and because of the very limited resource, they don't work with each other, but they compete and they struggle to get as many competencies on their side, because that means that they will get more money and more people to work. And that is why we have not an integrated management system, but we have a chaos. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Water Management is the main institution that deals with water management. But from the name of the ministry, you can see that there is agriculture and there is forestry also, which are partly sectors that use water, not save it. And from the personal side, you can see that like the minister or state secretaries are always people who are not into the water management, but in this mostly agriculture field. So the main institution in reality for water management in Serbia is Republic Water Directorate that is in charge for the water management, but it shares its competencies with two public companies called Serbia Vode, and in Vojvodina it's Vojvodina Vode. And then when we talk about environmental protection, it's not in this ministry, but there is a separate environmental protection ministry that deals with the environmental protection that protects water from the pollution. But also then on the local level, there are a number of different utility companies and administration, secretariats that also have different competencies regarding to the water management and environmental protection. On all of this, most of the local institutions that deal with the water management, they don't do, and environmental protection, they don't deal only with this, but they also work on building, construction, different kinds of communal services. And in smaller communities, it's only one person. So it's really, really very not integrated system of water management. And where are the citizens there? There are no citizens in the water management. There is only one institution called the National Water Conference that was established in 2011 that was supposed to include not only citizens, but also academia, independent experts that will advise the government in this area. But 10 years later, we still don't have this institution. So it's only proclaimed on paper, but the members were never chosen. And there was no meeting in the last 10 years of this institution. And we had even like the change of strategy for water management, where there were no citizens and expert inclusion. And also, what is also important is water monitoring of water quality and water quantity. It's also separated in two institutions. One is the Environmental Protection Agency, and the second one is the Republic of Hydrometeorological Institute of Serbia. But there are also a number of other institutions like Institute for Health Protection, Occupational Safety, Nature Protection that have different areas of water management. Yes, and that because of the, maybe in some countries that would function, but in Serbia, as I said, where there is no political will to preserve water and to manage it properly, but just to use it. And when there is a very, very lack of resources, even human and talking about budget, this really brings a lot of problems. And to add on that, in 2018, law on communal services changed, which allowed private companies to get into the water management and waste treatment management sector. It was done because of one very unlucky or very, very bad case of Zrenjanin. Zrenjanin is a city that in 21st century this year celebrated 18 years of not having drinking water.
18 years they don't have water.
And what most people ask us, how is it possible that the city doesn't have the water for 18 years? And how is it possible that citizens don't rise up and protest? So we sat down and did the research. And we realized that in the last, these 18 years, there were 7 different projects that were not like on the same line, but 7 different solutions for these problems, and they all fell apart because of the corruption and because of really poor and miscaptured institutions. In 2018, the Zrenjanin finally got its water factory. We call it factory of people who are thirsty, because it never worked. And in 2021, it was closed because the Health Institute found 13 different parameters to prove that the water from this water of thirsty, yes, is not a right. Even 3 people got into the jail, and people now in Zrenjanin still buy their water. People who do not have money to buy water, they drink it. And they know that they are endangering their health, but they do it anyway because they don't have money. And there is a research that Zrenjanin spends 20,000 euros a day for healthy water. Next point that I wanted to tell you, just a couple of numbers to prove that the situation is not working. 81% of population in Serbia is supplied with water through public infrastructure. Only 55% of population has a connection to sewage, while 3 million people carry their wastewater into the septic tanks. Only 10% of population is covered by some of the water or some of the wastewater treatment. Belgrade, for example, doesn't take care of its wastewater at all. All of our wastewater goes directly to our rivers. The problem is also investments. The age of water supply and sewage network is very high, over 50 years. Over 1 million people in Serbia do not have access to clean and sanitary drinking water, especially in Vojvodina. Where is this Zrenjanin? Oh, 3 minutes. Oh, sorry.
No.
Small settlements in Serbia, like villages, rely on water wells, which have their own problems. What we can see on the field is because of this lack of wastewater treatment, more and more of them are getting sick. They are used to drinking this water and they do not realize how polluted water is, so they continue to drink it, and doctors tell us that there is an epidemic of Escherichia coli all over Serbia. Also, informal settlements do not have any access to sanitary conditions, especially water for drinking. And water is also polluted from illegal construction on the rivers and investors' urbanism. The most famous case about this that we probably recognize from the people from Serbia is Užice, where in 2014, a lake Vrutci, where this city got its water from, flourished with algae. It was completely pink, this huge lake. And the city of 50,000 people was left without drinking water overnight. And just this year, so 7 years after, the lake is finally safe for drinking again. And all of these problems, I have to say, got worse during pandemic crisis, which is very worrying because water was really one of the crucial goods for fighting the pandemic crisis. And I will jump over these other numbers. So as I said, a lot of problems are within the budget. Only 0.3% of the budget in Serbia is allocated for the environmental protection. The Fiscal Council recommended that this percent needs to be a minimum of 1% of GDP in order to be able to talk about any progress. And in the water management sector, there will be needed in the next period 4.3 billion euros just to get to the minimum of EU standards. And just shortly, it's not only pollution and not only a poor management problem, but also privatization of water goods. We don't have an exact data. Strahinja and me and my colleague Eva are now still trying to gather data that, to see how many water wells are really privatized. But what we gather so far is that around 1/3 of our water sources is privatized. And what we know for a fact is that 80% of these privatized wells is in the hands of the foreign companies and 50% in Coca-Cola's hand. And another problem is privatization of water that is used for health. Like all of our spas, or most of them that are not destroyed, are privatized. And even the ones, and what we can see in practice, that even the ones that are in the public eye good privatization, like Vrnjačka Banja, they have a lot of problems. This summer, from 7 health wells, 3 of them were dried out completely, and the local government and national governments denied this problem, but after the persistent protests of the local environmental group for a couple of weeks, I hope not years, the local government shut down these wells and get them to revitalization. But having in mind like all of these problems and climate change, like this summer in Serbia, we had 57 days without any rain. And we had 22 municipalities who declared water shortages or water restrictions. These problems will only get worse, and we really need to, we needed to react 25 years ago, but if not, we need to react now.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for this extremely rich, precise, and depressive presentation, because this is horrible, what we heard. And I also want to thank you that you're actually fighting for our water, Jacqueline and her friend, colleague and friend Eva, that we met so many times actually on the streets or in the fields, or as you said. I mean, really, thank you guys that you're doing this, because when we hear all this data, this is really depressing and worrying. So, worrying is actually the light word. So we heard, let's say, the political background and the system of water management in Serbia. Thank you. And also, if I can extract some keywords like corruption, privatization, that are actually are very, very in this this topic, involved in this topic that is very difficult to solve from the top, from the bottom, let's say. But I hope that all these people in your photos and this energy and the will to have water in Serbia will somehow help. So now let's go to Buenos Aires. From Užice and Vrnjačka Banja, let's go to Buenos Aires. And Elena, please. So can we have her presentation, please?
Okay, so in the meantime, thank you very much, Sanja, for inviting me, and thank you to the colleagues for sharing with all of us and with me your knowledge, because no knowledge is meaningful by itself. All knowledge has got to maybe not only become practical and political on the field, as you're telling us, but also hyper-connecting, otherwise it's a piece of written paper. Shall I move the thing?
If you like.
Yes? Thanks. Okay, so is it this one? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so I actually, if you think you didn't have a presentation, I don't have a presentation either, because I have a lot of photos from the fieldwork which I've done in Argentina a couple of years ago, and there was a short fieldwork because it was interrupted by the COVID. Therefore, the academic situation which had allowed that fieldwork collapsed in the meantime, and you're going to understand now why. So there was a half of research which is ongoing. What was striking me is the deep interlink between the political dimension of the commitment of the citizens in Buenos Aires, mixing their attitude of engagement between the history of Argentina, which is a history of dictatorship in the 70s and early 80s, and then a severe economical crisis, which keep on popping up, and the transformation of the city, especially the waterfront. So this is why I call this introduction the political river. Very briefly, I'm going to tell you where we are, because we are far away from Serbia. Rio de la Plata is the river. It's at the center of our discussion today. It's a very important river because it's collecting the waters from most of the large rivers in Southern America, and it's converging there where you see the Rio de la Plata is just this last bit here. But it's the convergence of a number of very important rivers. Therefore, it's full of different soils and different arriving substances from biological and ecological background. So the Rio de la Plata means a river of silver. It's actually of a very strange color. And it's a bordering river because you have Uruguay on the northern side, Argentina on the southern side, and both of the capitals of the two big states overface the river. So Buenos Aires on the southern coast and Montevideo on the northern coast. Therefore, these are the largest cities, not only the capital, in the two countries, which are overflowing over their waste and dust in the rivers. These are a couple of fascinating photos which are taken from the ocean, watching the coast. So the top photo, the green and the blue are, the green is South America, and the Rio de la Plata is the brownish waters coming to the south, towards us, let's say. Whereas this other is taken, this second photo is taken from the beginning of the estuary region, from here, watching eastward. Okay, so the ocean is at the bottom of the photo, in the lower photo. I show you this photo because these are important for the Argentinian people, for the Buenos Aires people, which define themselves as porteños. Porto, port, is a harbor, of course, and the people from Buenos Aires call themselves porteños, those from the port, okay? Therefore, the relation with the port and with the water isn't anything that can be simply turned down as it is. Okay, so let me jump, oh no, I have to skip with this. On the history part, I'm gonna be fast, and you can interrupt me anytime, please. Or
better
just
to skip some info than to be fast, because you
better to skip. Okay.
So no, I'm saying when you speak too fast, then you know what happens.
Okay, if there's a problem, you will interrupt me. Okay, I'm fine with being interrupted. Actually, I like it. Right. So, dictatorship in Argentina. I'm not going to tell you anything about history, but the thing is that this very terrible time of Argentina history is characterized by, on one hand, a super big economical development because of loads of funds from Spanish banking systems and the American US banking system supporting the colonial regimes. This was, of course, not over known and super well published in the paper, but this was the thing. So new works in the city, the new airports, the new railway structure, a lot of renovation in the cities. In the meantime, a lot of traffic jam, an incredible amount of like 1.5 million automobiles were circulating in Buenos Aires in 1976, which is amazing considering the relevance of the city. But in the meantime, they say the social gap between the wealthy and the poor people was dramatically increasing. Therefore, we had 6% of the population living below the threshold of extreme poverty, and over 2 million people living in slums, okay? Living in slums, in particular in Buenos Aires, it was estimated that almost 2,100 people were living in slums in Buenos Aires. Though this contradiction was unacceptable. There was a sort of unpresentable face of the big, beautiful Buenos Aires, especially because in 1978, the oldest among you might remember, I actually do, I'm old enough, in 1978, there was the World Football Championship in Argentina. So there was a big sort of a vitrine, a big show, showcase for the country, which had to kind of show the world how beautiful they were performing. So that was the super plan. One of the worst military personnel was the mayor of Buenos Aires, Osvaldo Cacciatore, an infamous person, which basically decided the construction of an urban motorway in the city on the places where the slums were. So the slums had to be destroyed, and a large freeway, elevated and with toll, had to be built in the city to relieve the city from the big traffic jam and to give fast access to the airport areas, to the port areas, at the cost of the people living in the areas. So basically what happened, these roadworks characterized the life of the city forever, because tons and tons of debris of roadworks were carried out of where the slums were.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Which period is this?
It's 76 to 79. And then the construction. The construction was finished in 1986, after the dictatorship finished. It was during the dictatorship. And there were moments of really big social clash, not only because of the dictatorship was, of course, displacing the people. There were all this desaparecido business, you know the story. But the idea here was also to let the people see the trucks with the debris of the home being carried out of Buenos Aires. So Buenos Aires, this was the quote from the town hall, was not a city for everybody. Buenos Aires was a beautiful, shining and rich city which couldn't face these angles of poverty. Therefore, the debris were carried out of the city, but actually what? They were shoveled down in the river. So in front of the port, slightly aside, I'm going to show you the map, the construction of the motorway was basically the reason to start a second, much more impressive project, which was the idea of developing a new island, a very brand new island, to let an island grow out of the river basin in front of the waterfront of Buenos Aires, to move there the House of Government. The idea was to take away, let me go here first. So, take away, this is Plaza de Mayo, a very famous square, and there is, in the bottom there is the Casa Rosada, it's the pink house, it's the House of Government of the local government of Buenos Aires. This is a difficult place to control. The Casa Rosada is full of windows and full of doors, full of arches. It couldn't be defended, militarily speaking. It was facing Plaza de Mayo, where demonstrations, sit-ins, and continuous people's activity were taking place. Therefore, it was difficult to have this very unpopular government there in the middle of the city and proximate to the sea. You can see at the bottom of the photo, the sea is over there, okay? So where are we? Let me go back to the map. I didn't mention the villa, but never mind. The red area in the first photo encloses one of the biggest slums. By irony, which is typical in the Argentinian language, the Spanish version of the Argentinian version of Spanish, villas is the way to call the slums, okay, villa. And Villa 31, it's because in the papers, the dictatorship used to call, we have this disgusting, at least 30 villas in Buenos Aires, which have to be swept away. And they call themselves the 31st, so the one that would have resisted the sweeping away. But
sorry, Elena, what happened to the people who were living in those slums?
they were relocated. They were relocated outside of Buenos Aires in the periphery. But most of them resisted and went back there, so I'm going to tell you this. I would like to show you where is this Villa 31 with respect to the Plaza de Mayo and Casa Rosada. You can see the stars in the second map. Basically, the walk of the trucks in the city, which were accompanied by demonstration all the time, was from the demolition of the Villa 31 down to the city. The motorways weren't there. Here, this is the port. You can see the port structures, which are here, okay, these three big docks. And these were the area where the debris and the rocks and the remains of the war construction were put, okay. So, okay, in 1983, for external pressure, the dictatorships, Jorge Videla, the dictator, dies. His followers are not able to agree on a general which will take the place. Therefore, basically, in the round of 1 year after Videla's death, the dictatorships fails. The US withdraw their support. Let's put it this way. So what happens? The motorway, thank you, Sanya, is considered to be very crucial. Therefore, the works are finished. The works of the motorways are actually completed for the good of the city. But the people went back and to live there. Not all of them. So out of the, I would say 20–30% of the people that had been forcibly removed outside of the city came back. Okay, came back and they reassembled lives and houses below the new infrastructure, so, sort of benefiting from the new infrastructure, recustomizing, reappropriating them. Okay, I'm going to be fast on this. I'll show you the photo after that. So what happens to the island? What happened to the island of debris? Of course, luckily, that project of removing the Casa Rosada never took place, but the island had emerged from the sea already. It was there. It was a pile of 300 hectares of debris. So I'm just going to let the photo speak because I spent quite some time there. This is what the island is made of. It's rocks and bricks and irons and remains and details and large assemblages and amazing pieces of things that you can't even understand the story, but they make some sense. They have a story. They have what we would call an anthropogenic story. This is an history of the Anthropocene. That didn't exist. Basically, as you know, Argentina underwent a very big series of major economic crises. Therefore, nobody took care of this island anymore. They was simply abandoned. It was a pile of rubbish in the middle of the river. It was not a pile, it was very big. That it stayed. What happened? Simply, the Rio de la Plata filled it in, filled the gaps in among the debris, and the island consolidated. and some plants started growing. And because of the debris coming from inland, they were carrying material and type of soils which were unusual for the riverine context. So ecologically speaking, that was a strange place. And birds which were not making their nest in the river coast before started stopping there. So this area acquired a new meaning, and it took the economical crisis of Argentina, so to let everything go, to abandon, because that was an abandoned place, okay, for 20 years, almost. So how does it look like? Do I have the time to show the video? Maybe I'll show it later, okay? This is a video which I didn't take. It was done with a drone by somebody which couldn't really fly the drone very well, so it's very strange, but it's interesting. I can share this link. It's on YouTube, and it shows how the island works from an aerial view, how the island goes today. But let me...
8-9 minutes more, so as you like.
I have time.
8 minutes more.
Okay, so very good. So I can take some breath and basically show you what's... I really need to draw your attention on this map. Okay. You know Casa Rosada, and it's here. Casa Rosada, I didn't put the star on it, okay? So we are exactly in front. The green area, of course, used to be the island, the would-be island of debris. What has happened? Major interest by constructors and builders and city developers were attracted by this area. That was the fantastic place to construct a waterfront with expensive buildings, offices, super modern infrastructure. But the activity from the citizens and the superposition between political engagement, because there was the years after the dictatorship, so a time when the documentation from the atrocities done by the dictatorship were emerging, and the offenses to natural context, which had been completely in the second level of attention, because during the dictatorship, of course, the natural protection wasn't an issue on the table. These two type of movements came together as in a converging way of giving strength to each other. So therefore the resistance to give meaning to this island became a political resistance, as if the very risk of having an island which was meant to isolate the government outside of the people protest would need the new birds to make their nest there. So there was a sort of creating a virtuous loop of strengths, of political engagement in order to understand what the story had been in Argentina, and at the same time the defense of nature, or the resignification of nature in a way. So these three I mentioned there, Vida Silvestre Argentina, Aves Argentinas, and Amigos de la Tierra, are just three, you understand these words, okay, life in the greens, Aves is Argentinian birds, and Friends of the Earth, just three of the main actors which fought against, basically, let me get to another slide, this one, until they arrived basically in 1986, so this is amazing, only 3 years after the fall of Videla. The area became a zona ecologica protetta, which was the minimal legal recognition, but enough to stop the works, enough to stop the privatization and the selling to constructors. This had a sort of, oh, there's a mistake, sorry, because that's a 1994 in the second, sorry, there's a mistake here. This is 1994. That was much more important because it became a zone of national interest, meaning that national investment could be done in order to not only maintain it, but make it usable, because it was completely wild. It was the wilderness there. So in front of the beautiful waterfront, it was an area of still rubbish. Some plants couldn't be walked through because the soil was very uneven and because of the vegetation had grown in a wild way. So it was a very interesting place, some wilderness in the middle of the city. Since the end of the 90s and then in the recent years, this has become a proper reserva ecologica, meaning there are tracks, pathways, and stuff. So how does the place look like now? This is from the waterfront overfacing the island. If I am in Buenos Aires and I watch the island, this is what I see. Where I have the thick vegetation, I see the island. But in between myself, staying in the waterfront of Buenos Aires, to the island, I have marsh. because it wasn't clean anyway. The water is very shallow, and therefore it's full of birds. I took personally these photos. I'm not a big photographer, therefore if I took this, it means that it's really, really full of birds which want to be photographed. But of course, this is no more the place where people could swim and bathe or enjoy. This is overfacing a marsh. On the other hand, the external side of the island, the one looking Uruguay is 50 kilometers away, therefore it's invisible, it's on the other side of the Rio de la Plata. This is the way it looks. Some soil and some grass have been grown, but the stories, the narration of this place isn't nice. If you look also in the social, they say, okay, but this is a place, shall we girls go there by ourselves? Shall we go there at night? Continuously there are fires, because of course once the wood is gone on fire, it's easier to start acquisition and recognition. So it's a complicated place. And then we'll speak about this Dubrovnik piece later. This is how Buenos Aires looks from the island. So if we are on the island and look at the city, you see the marsh, and then the waterfront, which is no longer usable, basically. In the meantime, the super skyscrapers and the very boring skyline, which is everywhere in the city, has been built. So this is the waterfront I was presenting to you, from the island to the city. Where are the skyscrapers? They are all here, because these first bits of the waterfront have been transformed into a new area, which is called Puerto Madero. It's a super posh and expensive looking. I have another piece of PowerPoint, but I'm not going to talk about this now. Basically, the river had been diverted to create this second fake canal here. There is a new waterfront, which is this one, where they constructed posh buildings. There's a museum of navigation. There's a beautiful walk where people from Argentina, the porteños, don't go, which is of course not inhabited. And so there's still an open quarrel about that. This triangular shape area constructed there between the new canal here and the older waterfront is an area of Puerto Madero of political clash. Okay, so I think I finished my time. What I want to say is that the exercise and the control and power over water is always escaping. Water doesn't let itself be entrapped. In the round of 50 years, because from the 70s to today, we got 50 years of political agreements, political victories, bad defeats, and unpredictable results, which are worth fighting for. Basta.
Basta.
Thank you. Sorry for being too long.
No, you're not. You're precise. Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Elena, for this rich and incredibly interesting example that I guess that most of us are not really familiar with.
No, I just want to show you the waterfront. Okay, this is the new waterfront.
And actually, it's great to see that even though it's in another continent, it's good to see that the scenery, I mean not the scenery, sorry, the recipe is always the same. We have similar problems. I can't wait to take you tomorrow to see our waterfront and our island and our rivers, so we can make a parallel, and I hope that your research will continue.
I hope so.
Now when the COVID is
yes,
disappearing.
I made this visit with two colleagues, a biologist and an architect. The biologist is still in university, the architect has been removed, and he had a contract. He was not a staff, he was not a permanent professor at university, and he made some publications in Spanish. I think the only way here is to publish in a language which is not that of the country. And so now he doesn't have the contract there anymore. So
we have to find another architect.
I need a team. I need a team in Argentina.
Or in Serbia.
Or in Serbia, sure.
To follow you. Thank you. Can we now see for a moment Neil and then start with his presentation so he can just say hello to us?
Hello.
Hi Neil, so sorry that you can't be with us here, but hopefully next time.
indeed. Apologies, an exam board this afternoon means that I'm having to appear remotely.
So this is Neil, and I wanted people to see you at least 2D, because we now have to start your presentation, so they won't be able to see you. Is that fine?
Yeah, absolutely fine. And apologies in advance for the amount of times I'll be asking you for the next slide.
No problem, no problems. Just say it.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So whenever you want, you can start.
Yeah, no problem. I'll share the screen on my own so I can see it slightly larger here. 1 second. Okay, good morning. Apologies, I can't be with you today. I'm very much preferred to be in Belgrade, and hopefully...
Neil, sorry, just a second. So actually, you can share your presentation and just change the slides. Yeah, no need to tell me when to do it.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. The settings changed. This will make it a lot easier. Brilliant
yes,
stuff.
Definitely.
Let's see, 1 second.
And we can see you.
Yes, you can see me struggling with the technology as always.
It's a common struggle.
It is, very much so. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can see my slides fairly soon.
I hope that the message from the chat is not like we don't hear and see anything. Can we just...
hopefully not.
No?
Hopefully not.
Can someone check, please?
It said something popped up that said participants can now see, which is good. Okay. Can people see?
Yes.
I, like Elena, I'm very happy to be interrupted at any stage. My own presentation isn't very theoretical. It's more sort of a general overview of the city that I'm from, Belfast, some of the issues in relation to our own waterfront, but also some practices that are happening in well-known cities around the world. This piece is very much just, I suppose, a stepping point, hopefully to generate some discussion about changes that are happening in your own particular riverfronts, your own cities, the environmental, social, political challenges associated with regenerating the spaces. Really enjoyed the first two presentations, quite different to my own. And I look forward to seeing the slides from Buenos Aires in more detail because it was quite hard to see online, but I very much look forward to hearing that. Really enjoyed the presentation. I thought I'd start with a little bit of context, just as Sanya mentioned at the start, how rivers have become central to most cities' regeneration strategies, spaces that have been neglected, from Inner Harbor in Baltimore as one of these first property-led regeneration initiatives of former industrial waterfronts. Many poster boys of architectural development from the Guggenheim to Wan Chai in Hong Kong examples. I'm talking a bit about Belfast, the city that I'm from. Belfasta is what's named after one of its rivers, the Farset River, because it was very much central to the formation and the foundation of the settlement in the first place. Like many cities, in Belfast has neglected its rivers, it's culverted them. They've become shucks or drains, hidden underneath the fabric. The old map can show the location of some of the secondary rivers that flow into the River Lagan, one of the more significant rivers in Northern Ireland and Ireland itself. And here you get an idea of how the waterfront has changed. High Street, the location of the Farset, completely underground, like many other cities. The famous example for Korea is used often in placemaking circles to show how we can reintroduce our rivers to city centres. This stream, this drain on the right-hand side is the River Farset, the river from which Belfast takes its name. Something that you can't see other than small sections until you get out into the hills, just to show, how much in, industrial cities, we have really neglected our natural assets for generations. Belfast itself, so I'm presuming people know a bit about it, but maybe not too much because we're not in the news as much as we used to be. A very recent film, I think, won a few Oscars, quite a nostalgic look at the history of our own troubles and contestation, Belfast was a very significant city in the industrial period during the British Empire. It's where the Titanic boat of James Cameron's eponymous film was created. You know, very much an industrial city, large rope works, many mills that depended on our rivers. But like many other places, it faced a large period of industrial decline, stagnation. The River Lagan, the main river, is an estuarine river, one that flows out into Belfast Lough, into the Irish Sea. And the images on the right give you an idea of what you would be looking at in the 70s and 80s. The smell of the city would have been quite different. You can see from the visual in the top right corner, the amount of factories, the businesses that would have backed on. Essentially, the river would have been something that cities across Ireland generally backed onto. It would have been used as a drain, a place for industrial effluent. The biggest project in terms of reintroducing the river to the city and actually trying to embrace it even slightly would have been the introduction of the Lagan Weir over 20 years ago to manage the river levels, but also to facilitate the regeneration of a number of these derelict brownfield sites. The Lagan Side Corporation, like a later version of the types of, I suppose, development companies that would have created places like Canary Wharf in London, this would have been very much the Belfast version. The architecture itself that would have been created, you can see the yellow brick structures, wouldn't be something that would be adorning the front pages of many architectural magazines, but it was significant. You know, bringing in private investment to spaces that had been previously underused, very heavily polluted. In terms of the outcomes of the work of this Lagan Side Corporation, over £1 billion was invested in the area. 15,000 jobs were created. By way of context, Belfast is a city of around 350,000 people, but one that has declined in the second half of the 20th century through, I suppose, liberal planning in surrounding towns, decentralization policy, but also through our own period of the Troubles when areas wouldn't have necessarily been as safe as well. A significant amount of office space, but also some residential apartment developments were part of this scheme. We can have a look at where we're at the moment in Belfast. The map in the bottom right shows the missing city. You can see where the road schemes will have severed the traditional communities from our city centre. This small green space, which I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, is our city hall. Yeah, thank you. And this is very much the commercial district, but huge amounts of derelict land down to the riverside. This district here is where the Titanic would have been constructed. And a really you can see by the size of the master plan, this area here, similar size to our own city centre. Huge amounts of development pressure within this location, but trying to work out what works best. How do we create something that benefits people from Belfast? Huge amounts of our population would have, or their parents would have worked in industries that no longer exist. How can we create new development that offers opportunities to people who have been left behind by a move from a city dominated by industry to one that's dominated by the service and IT sectors? So you can see the scale of proposed development. A lot of this initial Titanic quarter framework from 2008 was never developed due to global crashes previously. The most recent strategy for the city, and a lot of cities, every city's got a version of this, especially since lockdown, thinking about, okay, how do we reimagine our cities? How do we get people back to the center of them? How do we embrace our river? One of the things that Lagan Side did well was developing property, offices, but there isn't much when it comes to public life along our waterfront. They look at best practices. They're looking at, okay, well, how can we look at swimming in the river if the water quality improves? At the moment, that would still be something that would be done very much at your own risk, with the potential of needing your stomach pumped thereafter. Proposed projects in Belfast. Yes, these are projects that you see in many parts of the world. The site in the bottom corner here of the regeneration strategy is the Sirocco works, would have been one of the largest rope works in the world in the 19th century. And this is the type of development they're proposing now. Master planned by Henning Larsen, the urban design practice from Copenhagen. Minimal references to the history and heritage. The site itself is largely demolished, except for this retained chimney. One of the bigger issues here is that this development site is adjacent to interface communities. The area where I'm hovering my cursor, which I think you can see, I think Sanya confirmed, is the Short Strand community. It's a small nationalist, Catholic, Republican community in an area that's predominantly Protestant. So it's an area that is very much a working class community that suffers multiple deprivation, quite an inward looking, an enclave in many ways, in a larger area that is surrounded by a working class Protestant population, many of whom would have worked in the shipyards and industry within the area. So we've got a really difficult social context within the area. And then we've got these luxury apartments, and how do we accommodate social and affordable housing being part of the broader challenges. We've got huge apartments proposed, and looking at how do we ensure that we end up with an appropriate social mix here. 2/3 of the apartments in the bottom center of the screen are proposed to be built to rent. This is a model that's increasingly being introduced to cities, not something that is necessarily the best for sustainable communities. So 2 out of 3 of these tower blocks are meant to be built to rent, for quick movement. And by way of context, this is an area where there is a burgeoning cybersecurity industry, but also a location, if you can see the building in the background, where Game of Thrones, and there's a burgeoning film industry in Belfast where Game of Thrones would be filmed as well. So that kind of, I suppose, creating properties for the professional classes, but how do we incorporate, people that are from the area, whose communities were there, whose pasts were enshrined in the industrial fabric of the place. One project that started recently in this Maritime Mile, as it's called, which is either side of our river, is the Hubin project, which is looking at, okay, how do we retain the heritage that is here? Because there are areas, the dry docks are still retained. The drawing rooms where Titanic was designed are just located to the rear. You can just about see it's being turned into a hotel. We have our Titanic attraction designed by Eric Kuhn, the American architect, not part of a sort of historical heritage, but maybe a future heritage. But how do we keep these stories? How do we keep this industrial past? Some of it's an imagined heritage with these windows associated with Game of Thrones that has been intrinsically part of Belfast and Northern Ireland for the last 7 or 8 years. And here, Belfast is working with 7 other cities to look at how the public realm can reflect the industrial and maritime heritage and smart technologies. I think it's an interesting project. I'm curious to see where it goes. Is it just going to be tokenistic elements within the public realm, or is there a way that we manage to retain this important history? It's why the city grew, and ensuring that we're able to respect that with the new development that will inevitably follow. In terms of heritage values and waterfront regeneration, this is one of the broader challenges that cities around the world face. Thinking about the loss on the World Heritage sites of Dresden through inappropriate waterfront development, and closer to where I am at the moment, another very important Victorian port city, Liverpool, losing its World Heritage status for the amount of development that the council had been approving, which damaged its own, outstanding values, with the Everton Stadium being the straw that broke the camel's back in this instance. I thought it'd be good to make some reference to ecological interventions. I know that the next speaker, Cheddo, is probably going to talk maybe more about nature-based solutions, but this is a project that I think is a really fascinating one. I'm sure some people have seen this 1 billion oysters, looking at how nature-based solutions can be part of a way of improving water quality. which Jacqueline talked about in the first section, albeit a different type of an approach altogether, different context. But looking at how this habitat restoration, recreation could help deal with a number of the challenges that our riverine cities are facing. Here it's looking at how they can deal with making storms less dangerous, but also trying to reintroduce what would have been a huge ecosystem previously in the estuary of the Hudson River. This is borrowed from a webinar that Queen's produced with Ali Sant, and gives you an idea of the success of some of the reintroductions of oysters within New York City. A sustainable food source, but one that has massive potential for water improvements, quality. The second is our second example, wandering to some very well-known cities, just to think, does this relate to where you are? What are the challenges? None of these are perfect examples by any means. And this is one that I've visited a few times, and very much a tactical intervention, and an important one in how we actually give our waterfront back to people, how we take it away from the private car that dominates many of our cities. The project in Paris, where the traffic was removed and tactical urbanism was introduced. These slides I'll go through quite quickly. So you can see that we have a wide variety of different uses. This refers to the challenges of waterfront development and flooding in New Orleans, and should have been introduced a slide earlier. Apologies. In Paris, this opened in 2013, and I was looking at how can they come up with some interventions that can be moved quite quickly due to flood risk that give the river back to its people. Things like our floating gardens, exhibition areas, performance spaces, also spaces where people can actually sleep, where you can actually rest while you're away as well. And huge amounts of visitors, but also air quality improvements, because this is part of a wider approach that has been taken, very radical planning approach that has been taken in Paris over a number of years to remove heavy vehicles from the center, banning older diesel cars, pedestrianisation largely. Some will remember in the run-up to the European Championships in 2016, the extent of the floods that Paris faced as well. A large part of the reason why these interventions were to be temporary ones. And, it's part of a broader scheme, looking at how we actually try to take away from the cars that dominate our city centres. I think it was Ed Glasser who said that the 20th century wasn't about the skyscraper as the dominant urban planning intervention. It was about the car. It's about how we've given over so much of our city centres to the movement and the parking of vehicles. Very much the case in Belfast. But some very famous examples. This is the before and after from Paris, San Francisco as well, when you have this sort of snaking infrastructure, robbing people of access to their river. Similarly, well-known interventions from Madrid. In Paris, you can see that this becomes a space where people are able to enjoy. They're able to listen to music. They're able to hang out. They're able to be part of the city. The river is returned to its people. Small, light touch, tactical interventions, whether it's mazes to explore or spaces to sit, to watch the world go by. There's my wife. She'll curse me for that. Making her thoughts a bit like we would have in our peace walls in Belfast. Looking at how games can be part of it, how we can introduce the light side to our rivers, how we can make them public rather than maybe private spaces. Floating gardens, a way of potentially benefiting ecology, and even just the aesthetics, the exhibition space, the potential for the temporary there. Similarly, we can see the sleep pods that I talked about. Paris syndrome, I think, is something that affects, I believe, Japanese tourists who are maybe overwhelmed by their first experience of the city. But that's a tangent, I must admit. Part of a broader approach that's been popularized during the pandemic. Something that was part of an election promise in advance, this 15-minute city, the proximity principle, the banning of cars within the city core, the introduction of urban forests.
Neil, sorry, a couple of minutes more, please.
Yeah. Apologies, I have a tendency.
Then no worries.
I think I might be on the last section, which is looking at sort of the temporary uses, and Berlin, I think, is a wonderful example, mainly because the amount of space that would have been available, mainly through planning, the nature of reintegrating the divided city, and looking at the city as a laboratory for temporary uses, whether it is campsites, the community gardens that are particularly well known. This slide just gives an idea of the size of land, the amount of land that would have been available, and the media spray development, which I'll go through very quickly. This gives an idea of the amount of change that happened to the built fabric, the amount of new buildings that have been integrated, especially down the riverfront. You'll see here the amount of buildings that are in red. You have really interesting juxtapositions of very much community-led. This is sort of a young African sort of community space, performance space, cheek by jowl with shiny new office buildings. The media spray example, one that's from about 10 years or so ago, would have been an area where you had these types of juxtapositions. You know, the temporary interventions, looking at the European headquarters of MTV across. How do you keep the spirit of a place, the creativity that was introduced to bring people back? I guess the creative industries, development itself, massive, 180 hectares, 2.3 miles long, 3.5 kilometers, a number of heritage sites, and close proximity to the wall. So here you can see the new construction, the existing beside it, and there would have been a referendum to sink the proposals for this media spray development. Over 30,000 people voted, and they were in favor of a new development proposal, non-binding, wider challenges associated with this scheme. Similar issues, you know, here it would have involved the demolition of part of the Berlin Wall to allow yuppie apartments as described that were constructed as the wall was broken down. Similarly, you can see the type of development that has been introduced, you know, quite general, bland development. And the final example, which I'll go through very quickly, and apologies again, Chair, is Holzmarkt as an alternative to, you know, this neoliberal development. An interesting one in that here, the owners of the bar, the techno club, managed to convince a Swiss bank to invest on the site and create their own form of alternative development, which would be a mix of creative industries, you know, from the studio spaces to the bakers, the brewers, the distillers, the childcare facilities as well. You know, always a very profitable approach. But there, I think even just being able to get an ethical investor that wanted to allow the creative industries to stay part of this part of the river that they really were responsible for making interesting, creative, stimulating development pressure, I think is quite an interesting alternative development. And the financing has been one of the challenges with this. I realize it's been quite a sort of a rambly overview, but thank you.
Thanks, Neil, for this extremely rich presentation. Many examples. Thank you. We will need to process this. For me, personally, I mean, I really appreciate this reflection on heritage. Since Neil and I were literally writing a piece at the moment on heritage and politics regarding waterfronts. So yeah, heritage and modernization really a burning topic at the moment globally. So thank you for this. And I think that we will have some maybe thoughts later about this question on about cars in city centers. I see people in audience who are really interested in that. And now let's hear last speaker for today, Professor Cheddo Maximovic.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Pointer. Trouble. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Cheddo Maximovic. I used to work at the Civil Engineering faculty in Belgrade for 25 years, only quarter century. Now I work for another quarter century at the Imperial College, which, as you may know, is one of the three Imperial. Oxford and Cambridge are always fighting who is the best. So this year, Imperial to be the number one and Cambridge second, but it's rotational. Okay, so before I start my presentation, I would like to ask the gentleman to show the short 3 minutes animated film, which is coming from this Blue-Green Dream project, which I created and was run for 3 years with the participation of the leading European universities, and the result was this blue-green system, which I'm going to present today. So, film. It's done under the Climate Kick program of Europe.
Our cities are growing busier and bigger every minute, every day. And by 2050, an incredible 70% of us will be living in these urban environments. Conventional thinking tells us that if this happens, then pollution will grow and quality of life will suffer. Demands for energy, water and transport will all increase. Climate change means temperatures will rise, as well as the risk of flooding and droughts. Sounds daunting. Yet, imagine a different scenario. Imagine an innovative city that feels like the countryside. Imagine an urban environment where nature and infrastructure don't fight for space, but interact to create a healthier, cooler, more comfortable place for us all to live, work and play. This isn't fantasy, this isn't science fiction. Blue-green solutions are here right now and are helping to transform our world. Take trees. They're more than simply beautiful to look at. They reduce flood risk by capturing rainwater, and the evaporation and shading of 4 trees can save more than 25% of the energy needed for cooling a building. Inspired by these natural solutions, we have developed an innovative blue-green systems approach for urban planning. We calculate how the planned blue-green solutions improve local water and energy use, comfort, and deliver savings for the city as a whole. We look for synergies, for example, how a building interacts with a roof garden or with trees. The roof garden keeps the building warm in winter, cool in summer, absorbs stormwater, and any excess water can be reused. So let's use it to irrigate our trees. And while the roof garden is keeping the top of the building cool, the trees provide shade too. It is this type of systematic, natural, connective way of letting nature and our urban lifestyle work together that's at the heart of our thinking. By quantifying the benefits of blue-green solutions, we can maximise the value they add, whether for a building, a neighbourhood, or even an entire city. Our cities don't need to be grey. Let's change our mindset and make blue-green solutions part of our standard planning and living practice. There is so much more to show you, so download our brochure now via the link below, visit our site or follow us on Twitter and Facebook to find out more.
That is the film, and while they are preparing for the presentation, just to show you that there is I have one copy only, but you can download it from, this is about the blue-green solutions, which is the innovative way of thinking, bringing together water and green spaces and creating completely different philosophy of designing, of the rehabilitation of the existing cities and restoration and building new one. So what I'm going to present today is this completion of these blue-green solutions and how we do it. At the moment, we have 2 European projects, meaning implementation of this blue-green philosophy into open spaces in urban areas to create better health and well-being of future cities. I have succeeded in one of the projects, this is F-Polis, to involve 5 partners from Belgrade, including City, which was not very active in this project, but in the other one it was very active, and other academic and design institutions. So this is what I'm going to present today. It's based not only on this, but also on my rich experiences. As you can see, I've been using wrong shampoo, so the color has changed a bit of my hair. So what I present, why we need these blue-green solutions is the currently cities are growing and then planning strategies mismatch with the need of the future cities to be nice and green and healthy, so that we get suboptimal solutions and we need new opportunities to improve sustainability, climate resilience and so on. That's why we created this blue-green systems approach, which we are now testing throughout Europe. Europe has accepted it, we are testing it, and in addition to Belgrade we have demo sites in Greece, in Poland, in Denmark, in all over Europe, and we are trying to demonstrate. So there will be one, I will show you some more examples in Belgrade where. So the philosophy is like this. we see, many people see the problems. We have either too much water and flood, and then we have too little water and plants are dying. We have air pollution, noise, water pollution, and then we also have socio-economical problems. And we have this urban heat island, and all these people see problems all over the world. We don't see them as problems, we see them as an excellent opportunity to create a new way of thinking, a new way of designing, planning, and so on. And this is how we approach, and that everything has to be cheaper than standard. Unfortunately, due to corruption, and it doesn't seem to be cheaper. People are not very much interested in this. They are more conventional way because this brings bigger profits to those who are intimate. And that's how we... So the idea is to solve all these urban problems like flooding and climate change and biodiversity, noise, air pollution, by involving these people, residents and the professionals and the political and people like Jacqueline Azkovic, people who support it. Otherwise, it doesn't work without them because it all goes as business as usual. So we have to innovative approach to quantify interactions between these. We don't just design water. We don't just design water. We look at the water and green and how they interact and how we benefit from these interactions by solving several problems at the same time at the lower cost. And that is the philosophy. So this guy here is Socio-Economic Aspect, thanks to Sanya, which this was how we introduced this one. That was our mission in the beginning, but it's essentially all these people who are working, they work in silos. Everybody, transportation people, energy people, ministries don't talk to each other, they fight each other as Jacqueline presented, and we get suboptimal solutions, we get something which doesn't work for it. We create this new philosophy where we bring these people together, lock them in the room for 2 hours, 2 days, give them only tea and sandwich and nothing else. And you see that after 2 days, they agree in the frame, what should be done, how, and that is innovative philosophy. Creating a green framework of you won't believe. In the beginning, they fight each other. After 1 hour, they fight each other, but they realize that we don't let them out before they come with the solution of the framework. Then the professionals will do that. And this is what we need. People who are the integrators, people who have knowledge and political will and knowledge how to work with people to bring them together. And then it works. You won't believe how it works. So I'll start with my profession. I'm a water engineer. I graduated water engineering here in Belgrade, but it doesn't work alone. Water, as Jacqueline said, realize after 40 years that I need to do something which is interaction between disciplines. And this is how I started. I had this diagnostic planning modeling design in the water sector, which I bring together how to detect the water, abstraction water, purification, and this is the drinking water. And it's in rain, if you don't put it properly, it doesn't work. But then wastewater collection, wastewater, stormwater management, when it rains, cities are flooded, and then you use it as a wastewater treatment, which is very badly managed here in Serbia. And then we have the resource recycling. Every waste from one industry is the resource for the other. So all aquatic habitat, all these urban rivers, waterfronts, and so on. Helena has given an example of Buenos Aires. I can give you, I worked in Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo. Multiply the Buenos Aires by 10, and you get the numbers of people. And we did the master drainage plan 20 years ago. After 10 years, they celebrated first time in the history that the one document survived. And they celebrated. I was invited to give a speech. I thought it was going to be people like this. It was 600 people celebrating 10 years of first successful master plan, which we did in São Paulo, 16 million people. Okay, so the receiving water bodies and protection of these, and then all that under strong informatics support. I'm trying this to be not very technical, to present in such a way that they say, Europe said, make it sure that children understand. Children understand this, ministers don't. And that is where we have to put an emphasis. So this project is called F-Polis. It's not European politics. It is F Greek, nice, healthy, beautiful, nice cities, healthy cities, cities of well-being. And we have this number of people, about about 26 partners. We have demo sites in 4 European cities, and among these 4 European cities is Belgrade. We have 2 demo sites. One is so-called linear park, which is replacing the old railway system along the Danube. And then we have here New Belgrade, which is Ušće Park, and Zemun Cay, and War Island, and this area. This is very attractive area, but at the same time, this is the biggest concentration of the disposal of untreated wastewater. You have about 3, 4, 5 cubic meters of wastewater, but you pour the toilet, most of it ends up here in this zone. Karađorđev Trg, this is Ušće, if you look for Kalemegdan, that is where New Belgrade and Zemun water goes, and the river Sava at the bottom. The Čukarički Rukavac here is the Topšidar and Dedinje and so on, and all here. Belgrade waterfront here is again the biggest collector of wastewater, disposed just 100 meters above, near Gazela Bridge. So this is the area which is the richest in Europe with the wastewater disposed in the open courses. And
Cheddo, is there the example with the fish, with Sharan?
Yeah, okay, yeah, not Sharan, Smuj.
Smuj.
This is the place where the fishermen go there to catch the biggest Smuj. Because I said they dispose their wastewater, they are big as pigs, you know.
There's this explanation why.
Because they like this organic material, they eat it and grow fast.
Or this should be only small ones.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, but
don't buy ever a big smudge in Belgrade.
Okay, but that is not always like that. There is also some good ones. So we'll see. This is an example. Sorry, I pressed. And then we have another project called HEART. It's not the heart or is an organ, it's the health-related technology, which is another project. We are running these two projects where Belgrade is one of the examples. And I've mentioned to Gina, there will be a presentation. How do we involve public to support these projects near the Hotel Yugoslavia, where you see this railway monument, and that will be done in early June. And I would invite people to hear about it and support it. Otherwise, you get people who will always be against, and they can easily ruin. It's easy to ruin something. It's very difficult to develop something. So this is Linear Park. You may have seen some of it. Fortunately, this is a case where City of Belgrade was collaborative and planners, and we were successful in introducing a lot of innovative nature-based solutions all along this. And in the beginning, it was very difficult. There was no much interest in creating first park in Europe where you don't plant trees. You don't plant any trees. You select the trees, and you plant the trees which are known to be good for health, not only for health, but good for respiratory systems, for cardiovascular systems, for mental, for metabolic. So this park will have one zone where we plant the trees which are good for cardiovascular systems. So if you go there, you will not get rid of your heart problems immediately one visit. But if you develop your skills developing going there frequently, and if you have heart problems, maybe your health will be gradually improved by being exposed to very small number of people, because it's space. And then the space is not that rich. And then we have the respiratory system problems, then problems with the metabolic and mental problems, looking at the river. And so once, hopefully, that this river will not be heavily polluted by wastewater, but will be treated water. And that will be another problem, how we do it. So urban streams. I was involved in a project, European project 20 years ago. We developed a series of education. I'm going to show you only 3 slides. This is how urban rivers started. People start going there, and all the waste goes in these rivers. And then I have slide. This is Lebanon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is Rio de Janeiro. You go there, you have a beautiful city, and then you third street from the Copacabana beach are the slums you have seen. Much worse than what you have seen in Helena's pictures. And then you go to Sao Paulo. 50% of people live in slums. And this is how it starts. There's no toilet. There are no wastewater collection, solid waste collection. Everything goes in the streams, and it floods. Then all this is ending up. So we tried to do some meaningful things. And then finally, after this slide number 4, 5, 6, then in the end, we end up, which Neil mentioned, many rivers are culverted. London has 135 rivers which are closed, converted into sewer system, closed, and then on top you have beautiful streets with the shopping areas. So now it's time to reopen them, daylight them, and start creating nice green corridors, waterfronts in cities, at the areas where the former Belgrade has many. Bulbuderski potok, many of them are closed. Mirjevski potok, all closed and road. And we don't see them. You see them only when they reach Sava River. But with the wastewater entering. So this is a process. America has already done 120-day lighting of their rivers in the city. Baltimore is one of them, and so on and so forth. Philadelphia, so. So this is an approach how to deal with the polluted. Bolečka reka, Kumodraška, everything is heavily polluted. Topčidarska reka, the excellent example. Čukarički Rukavac just exploded recently because of this waste collected there at the bottom. And it is probably going to happen near Ratno Ostrovo in this Dunavac if something doesn't happen. So this is Chonge project in Seoul was mentioned also. This is the best tourist attraction now. Temperature has gone down 6 degrees after they removed all these motorways and restored the urban river. And this is something to go. So these urban rivers. And then you've seen that guy in the first slide here, okay, 5,000 years ago. You see them here again, if it happens in the future. So this is the history. Anthropocene is the latest part, when we succeeded to destroy everything, water, soil, air, everything polluted in the last 200 years after the invention of the steam engine. And then, so that is Elena presented it nicely. So I'll go quickly through different parts of this urban river. Urban storm drainage. When it rains, Voždovac, over the step, which is on top hill, is flooded. Not to mention Dorčol. It heavily rains, cities are flooded. So we have developed technology from just putting storm water in pipe and go in the river into something meaningful. It is called the sustainable urban drainage system, well known now. And people don't know. It was all created 20 plus years in my office. We had a project, we had the UK partners, we developed the sustainable urban drainage system, and it became part of Australian water sensitive urban design. It is a part of what China has, sponge cities. They're creating new cities as the size of New Belgrade in 2 years with sponge city, where there is no pipes. The water is collected, infiltrated, played with, and so on. So this is Chinese. And then blue-green solutions are here. So I will jump through this. This is technology behind this. How we've created technology, how cities can predict when it rains, that you know that next half an hour will be flooded, and you can at least close the metro systems that the people don't get flooded. And that is happening.
But it's okay, we don't have metro, so it's fine.
Okay,
we can skip that.
But Cetinje has metro. I'll tell you later. It's a metro in Cetinje, you know. So metro, you go by metro. Yeah. So you go to work, metro. Metro, there is no metro. And you think there is a work in Cetinje. Okay. So this is a technology, we have developed it, and how cities can predict it. Our blue-green is not just about this, it's about the whole biodiversity, parks, everything, so recycling water and so on. This is what we hope to be involved, including water abstraction. You've seen this, what they call metro in Belgrade. I called it so-called metro built on the Makiš. We planned, we modeled the Makiš 30 years ago. These are results of some Makiš. We analyzed what would happen if there is an accident, and how it would be damaging for nobody talks about that. Just simply, there is an empty space, let's build them. Give me a break. That doesn't work like that. And this is also about the wastewater treatment. Wastewater treatment, this is the traditional system which occupies a lot of space. This big. The Belgrade needs 56 hectares. It's already prepared in Veliko Selo. We said, don't build it there, because there's new technology which needs only a small portion of it, much cheaper, much more elegant, much more friendly. It doesn't work. It goes. The world is already here, a different generation. We are here in the world where you can design treatment plants, but small, elegant, somewhere in the city. You don't see them. Serbia is going for this old traditional way. Čista Serbia program, 100, 250, all 2 times more expensive, traditional, smelly, dirty, but there's no way you can do it. Well, fighting for it, and you will see some of the publications which I recently published on that. Okay, then this is a traditional way which is planned to be built in Serbia, dirty, smelly, huge, and this is a new system which is small, nice looking, clean, and much cheaper and much more elegant. And this is, I'm fighting for it to be introduced in Serbia in all 250. And Mirjana, who is, you may not know her, we are just discussed today how we can hopefully try to resolve it. Because the new technology is cheaper, much more elegant, less energy, cheaper in many aspects, and looks like a beautiful botanical garden, not like a dirty, smelly place. And this is an example from the University of Florida, where it is just being completed. Serbia, we have Serbia. This is, and I have this story of the two left shoes. You ask a cobbler, obućar, da napravi dve leve cipele. Good cobbler would not accept this, because they will ask him, who did it? And his reputation is gone. Our politicians, they ask designers, they have to do it old-fashioned, otherwise you will not get a job. And then all the systems are, instead of having this, we have that one on the left-hand side. And they claim it is just the most best technology in the world. Give me a break. That can be done in Belgrade, that can be done in Zemun, in Novi Sad, in Kragujevac, in everywhere where this new technology. And I have some idea in Belgrade, if it accepts this philosophy, decentralized, small scale, 230 million euros can be saved, not only on treatment plant. Treatment plant has metal saving, only collecting big pipes to bring the water to us. Okay, and this is an example where I demonstrated that in Belgrade, if it goes traditional way, it will spend about 200 million euros just to bring the water there. Then plus the system at Veliko Selo it needs 60 hectares. And I'm fighting for it to be replaced by something like this. Complete system resources. Like this is an example of improving this blue-green, implementing in planning blue-green technology in a winter resort sport in a mountain. But implement this for food, for energy, for cleaning, you can save. You almost don't need energy in the middle of the mountain, except for ski lifts and so on. So, and then to do that, we need a lot of experts. For example, in this HEART project, we implemented Dragiša Mišović and Batut experts to work with the people, measure their improvement of their health when they walk in this area in either Ciganlia and elsewhere. And this is the philosophy, how we do it. When people walk, we demonstrate, then we use this knowledge, we work with doctors, with the informatic people, we create new planning system, and we implement it, then future cities then be designed by that. Not only Belgrade, in Piraeus, and in Poland, but also that will spread throughout Europe, hopefully. That will then bring health and well-being, nature-based solutions, and then we do it, demonstrate, visualize by modeling, and that is, we are going to have instead of what people say, let's have a green roof, not green roof, multifunctional roof garden. That you have seen these beautiful places, and I asked what happened to this green wall here. I said, neighbors cut it, because you see this beautiful green wall, instead of being nice and green, it's now you've seen just out of this. So this is the philosophy that we bring all these people to create a nice and green city and go to, instead of silo interactions, instead of green roof, multifunctional roof gardens, instead of green infrastructure, we have droughts and so blue-green systems, and so on. So this is another example, and thanks to Sanja also, again, she has very big experience with the people in Block 70 and 70A, where we bring these volunteers to help us to implement this philosophy. This looks nice picture, but Čukarički Rukavac, as you know, is heavily polluted, it's exploded, and it brings Topšiderska Reka, which is heavily polluted without proper. Dedinje has no canalization, Dedinje has no electricity, and so on and so forth. But we will implement those good parts to demonstrate how it can be done in the future and expand this process. This is another example from Denmark, where a former hospital, we are working with them, redesigned, open for public, and this is now a recreational center park within all these blue-green interventions within here, and it is part of our project. So trees, trees are not all trees are good. Some trees are great. Some trees should never be planted because they are not good. Because trees emit some chemical constituents called BVOC, biogenic volatile organic carbons. If you inhale it, it's bad for you, and so on. So we select the trees, not just plant. We plant 1,000 trees. So we have to select the trees, and then we select them and implement in parks, in houses, in facades. This is an excellent example of facade which somebody destroyed. Just here, get out when you get. And that is what we are going to implement. We will have this park near Hotel Yugoslavia, and Green Park will demonstrate not just how we solve that problem, how that can be implemented in all cities in Europe, hopefully, and in China. I'm currently involved in Beijing, huge area, redevelopment, Green Heart, which is doing this philosophy and so on. So this is, final. This is a small building which will be near Hotel Yugoslavia, built unless somebody say, no, we will not build. It's easily to destroy it. We will build this, we call eco-educational hub, which will be permanent. So after the project, we will have all these technologies in the park, in the house, in the roof, in the facade, all around the place where people can come and see. And we'll have this here, an informatics center, sensors, collecting data, database, demonstration, visualization, and so on. We have the educational program to educate not only experts, but also common people, public. And then we have this method, how to traditional planning methodology be replaced by this blue-green, which we are now educating our students, our experts. But the weak point is the, as Jacqueline mentioned, political system, which has all traditional methodology based on the other decisions, based by the profit or corruption and so on. This is different. We're trying to. Muchas gracias. When an Argentinian went to Rome and they looked at the telephone book and said, oh, tutti argentinesi.
Thank you very much, Cheddo. At least we conclude with your optimism, and I hope that your project will finally be accepted by someone. But as we said,
yes.
there's a few problems that
they
we need to solve.
Yes. They are persistent. Indeed.
But I hope that your energy and optimism will work, and that some of also our commune projects will.
Exactly.
Will
but I need the people, young people like.
We are here, so we will work.
Exactly.
They are persistent, but we are persistent too.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I think that we're quite in time, so I won't make any, I won't steal time. I would like maybe someone from the online audience to ask a question or comment. Sorry?
Also present.
No, also present, but before the online people run away, I want to ask them if they have some comments or questions, and then of course people from the audience. Thank you very much.
Which cannot run away.
You cannot, because the doors are locked. Cheddo locked the door as he explained his gentle approach. So, okay. So anyone? Okay, we have Albina from Sweden. She turned on her microphone, so I guess it.
I did now. Thank you so much. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you so much. It's not a question or anything, but just a comment, and I'm thanking the organizers. So Sanja, thank you so much for bringing all these fantastic people together. It was really a joy to listen to. Of course, the results are not really the same across the space, but what becomes obvious in terms of Serbia, it's really these two sides of the coin, with the young, engaged and educated and super innovative ideas and people, and then this other side, the politicians with the traditional, almost Soviet ideology of doing things, and that is of course extremely frustrating. But I see that there are so many these fantastic initiatives, and of course bringing together these crazy ideas, sometimes crazy ideas, but also very practical ideas and solutions. I really hope that this would work out for the best, because this country deserves all the best. And I'm really sorry that I'm not there with you guys, but you hear by my voice, I'm still, COVID doesn't die. But still, thank you so much. Excellent job. Thank you.
If I may comment just one sentence.
Yes.
Not Soviet. This is post-Soviet.
This is
Soviet period. If you steal something small thing, you get prison.
Okay,
Billions.
Yes. But I really look forward to discussing this with you guys.
Thanks a lot, Albina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's important specification.
Okay, anyone? Also from the audience. 3D. Milica, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Milica Mazanovic. I'm a research fellow at the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory. I would first like to thank everyone. Well, first, Sanja, thank you for organizing this and compiling this amazing group of people who shared 4 fascinating topics. Jacqueline, thank you so much for presenting the situation in Serbia. I had no idea how dire it really was. So I feel like I really want to discover more about the whole thing. Elena, thank you so much for, again, fascinating Anthropocene example that I knew nothing about. And Neil for demonstrating various mechanisms of place identity of making place identity across Europe. It was really, I think, useful and inspirational for all of us to sort of hear about it. And of course, Cheddo, thank you so much for sharing again your experience with changing the way urban planners, but also the society actually think about our built environments. And I have questions for all of you, but I will just save everyone's time and ask Cheddo, because I'm really interested as someone who moved recently to Belgrade, and I keep on getting depressed by the state of the relationship between the built environment and the natural environment in our city. So I completely understand how the blue and green solution will work and be tested in an area around Hotel Yugoslavia, which is open and has a lot of green space. But as, for example, a resident of a more densely built urban environment close to Jera market, I'm curious to find out how is this applied in such an area, which is densely built, a lot of private ownership there, a lot of, we call it investment architecture, where investors just construct these large-scale objects without any consideration of the environment and other humans living there. So how would that work in such an area?
Okay, there are two aspects of this. One is technical engineering that is quite possible, and we know how to do it in Kalužerica, for example, because San Paulo is much worse. So we've done a bit, but you also I've done.
There is something worse than Kalužerica.
Okay.
In that sense, of course.
But that is technically, we know, we have all the knowledge. Every house, every yard, every piece, square meter can be made green and so on. But there is another side of the coin. It's the political system. It's corruption. We have relatively modern laws, but they are not enforced. Brana and Akumulacija Gruža built to supply water for Kragujevac. Immediately, first house, weekend house, built by people, mayor of goodness knows, Kničevo, I don't know. Then the other, and then all wastewater goes in river, in that. And after 10 years, this water is Užice, no good for drinking. Somebody should prevent this guy, and we are building somebody. I want, the Toma Diploma built a house on Nasip, and nobody is protecting. So there has to be a system of enforcement preventing this from happening. And this system, you pay, goodness knows what, 10,000, 20,000 euros to a guy, you get a stamp, you do whatever you like. And this rubber stamp, which has a cost, is a cancer of the system. And that is what I wrote here. We have to have this socio-political system changed. And as a part of approaching to European Union, has to be, this whole system has to be. Otherwise, whatever beautiful that you can be in spacecraft, it will not fly. So, technically, it is possible everywhere. You've seen this backyard here. You see, it's already people have done a lot of, I was really impressed. But there is also somebody who cuts this, and the whole wall, this beautiful green wall could have been beautiful, is now dead.
So we basically just need to fix political system
both, one without other.
No, it's not only rule of law, and it's not only about institution, it's also about values. Because you can have the best laws in the world, but if you don't implement them or you don't understand
of course, law enforcement.
You cannot do anything.
And how can you see this thing happen? I mean, as Serbian, because this is the thing, excuse me, I interrupted.
No.
I mean, we can take examples from everywhere in the world, but this is most important. Of course, we are here because, okay. Do you see the enforcement of laws as a process which comes from inside or from whichever authority with an ethical level which is recognized. How do you see this thing happening if the thing was in your hand, right? Because apparently it's easier to write a law than to have it enforced if the system doesn't work, if the political democratical exchange between who writes and who applies the laws doesn't work. So how do you see this happening, considering the local scenario, the social local scenario?
It has to be combined. You cannot just bring a law and you expect the people who are stealing millions, billions, to do it voluntarily.
Exactly.
They will not, if they are not forced. And the action, and that's what I wrote here, civil disobedience is one of the actions, which I would not like to implement immediately, but I would try everything possible before this is the last measure. And it works.
Always, yes.
We've seen it it works for some time, but it has to be continued and it has to be persistent. Otherwise, they give a promise. They promise these guys to have a role in the political system, and after that, they stop demonstrating, and then they become part of the same system. So it is. This is.
What about international support, or at least international deep knowledge of what's happening in Serbia?
That's what I wanted to ask also Jacqueline.
It works to a certain extent. But I can give you examples that even the representatives of the international, the money is coming here. That is, everything is transparent and clear. But then the local advisors who work on behalf of this money, some of them are already learned how to use this money. And then officially that is done everything. Clearly the money is spent legally, but it's scratched under the surface. Part of that money is gone to some other.
No, I was thinking too, for example, through the social media, I could be an activist in Serbia without being physically in Serbia, right? This is
of course.
But the difficulty is, for example, I am really attentive to the Serbian issues because of my friendship with Sanja, but I was as well before. And I tell you that, for example, in the Italian media, okay, and I'm really attentive of the Italian media, Serbia is the minimum of the last of the information. I have to scratch the medias to find an information. Okay, and I always find information, even if something very important happens. Yes. So how can the community of engaged people support the Serbian engaged? How can, if they don't know? And it's amazing that we don't know because we are a few kilometers away, but by the internet, everybody is a few kilometers away. Everybody's there. So I was thinking, for example, of this possibility of, if you believe this could be a useful...
You don't have to be here. Most of these interviews I've written from London. I'm here today, and I'll be here a couple of more days, but most of the whole time I spend at work there, but I try to spend more time here to work with these people. So the media is one way, but 50% of people in Serbia don't read it. They don't have access to small areas, not only agricultural people or rural people, mainly elderly generation, younger people who are more committed. Many of them have gone already. Romania has lost 80 million people after joining European Union. Croatia is almost deserted. All young people are in Ireland or somewhere else. Ireland, I don't know why Ireland, but they first go to Ireland, then go somewhere else.
Maybe Neil knows.
Because of the Guinness.
Yeah, so the young and I really admire those people like Sanja, like Jacqueline, who are here, who are
looking back.
Doing things, the right things, and that's why I'm supporting them enthusiastically. And that's the way. We have to use whatever means possible.
But actually, I mean, occasions like this one, where we talk to Neil, we talk to you, we talk to Elena, is one of the ways that we try to figure out, also by being locked in the room, I agree, I 100% for radical measures sometimes, but that is the point. I mean, I was thinking like rivers, like that water is communal water, that is like Danube is passing through, I don't know, 10 countries or something like that. It's a pity that Serbia is on the other, at the other side, the other half, where after us comes Romania. And I mean, the point is that what would happen if Germany would be after us? Would they accept polluted Danube polluted water of Danube? I mean, do you have some information, like how does European agencies react to the fact that Sava and Danube, that are international rivers, are so polluted? I mean, I'm not focusing on Sava and Danube because I think that they're more important than, I don't know, Morava, but because of the fact that they're international. Like, what's happening there?
They're putting a lot of effort. There was recently called for big European project, Horizon Europe, for restoring Danube, and that I planned to apply, but I simply didn't work. So Europe is aware of that importance, and Europe is putting huge amount of money in Danube restoration and Danube catchment restoration, but that has to be done spread all over the place. You cannot just restore Danube and then whatever, Borska Reka, whoever, Timok brings thousands of tons.
There are networks for the Danube conservation, you know, which don't include Serbia.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, for a long time, the European institutions were on progressive side of changes, but unfortunately, I think the world changed in very bad way in many countries, and now this political will that lacks in Serbia lacks also in many of other countries. And unfortunately, these green solutions and the environment in general is a victim of different political calculations. And this crisis of environmental and climate crisis, unfortunately, will not spare any of citizens. So now I think because of the political elite trying to fight back and trying to survive, and this wrong economic system is trying to find a way to survive. We need global solidarity, unfortunately not on the institutional level, but on the citizens and environmental movement level, because we are unfortunately all facing similar problems. So it's not only, I think, for us, for the Balkans, it's not only our problem now. It's a global problem, and rivers of money flow everywhere now, of corruption and different bad stories. So now we all have to fight together, and it happens, like for us in the region and like on the EU level and on the global level, more and more organizations, initiatives, experts, professors like you are solidar and work together and fight back. And in that way, I am very optimistic, because I see in a very short period a lot of new people coming into the fight and fighting. So I wouldn't put so much, like these projects are very important in innovation and research, but it's just one side of the coin, as I said.
Of course.
Like activism needs to be like all of our job. So no matter what do you do in your like personal life, 8-hour work of everything, but other 8 hours of work, we really need to push back because it's urgent. And I think the generation that will come after us will not have choice. They will live in unlivable planet, and it's our job to ensure that.
Absolutely, but I think, I mean, the biggest problem is that people are not aware of the fact how urgent solutions are needed. That's the problem.
Is for this,
But do we have some other comments maybe from people who were listening to us carefully? Okay.
So
Maya, Zoki, can we first wait for Maya? Here, Maya.
You do it first.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask about this initiative of planting trees. How does it go? Like, can you be more specific? I mean, like, because I know this area, so what happens with the trees that are already there? And like, and also like, how is it now with the trees that are already planted in Belgrade?
Just a second. Can we also hear first Zoran, so then we can collect questions?
I made just a comment
for
the location for this blue-green project, which is nearby Hot Yugoslavia.
In Zemun.
Maybe it's better to put it to Borča. You were mentioning Kolođerica, but why not Borča? It's even worse now. It's competitive to Kolođerica. And
good idea.
It's already green and blue.
Exactly.
We only have those rafts and everything, so you can see the river. But if you remove the rafts, you will have green. It's a green surface. You will have blue. You will have Big War Island. So it's already perfect.
Exactly.
Without any intervention. And in Borča, unfortunately, people are We don't have parks. We don't have. We only have canals, but those canals which Cheddo showed, which are like polluted with the sewer system and everything. So.
Thank you.
You're right. So we are talking two different things.
Maybe first Maya's question.
Maya, in the beginning when we suggested let's use the linear park, let's plant 1 kilometer, the planners immediately rejected. Said this is not known, nobody knows about it. But step by step, by talking, convincing, presenting, in the end they kind of accepted it. There still has to be go through the planning process, to procedure, to the, but it looks like it's finally kind of accepted. Concerning the why we selected this park, this place, the selection of this place, not only in us, it's also in Athens, in Piraeus, they use the most attractive part, Mikrolima now, and also this is the place where people can come and see it. In Borca, nowhere they will go to see what is the innovative technology. This is not just to renew that park. You think it's good, but it's not. You go there and you see all these rafts. We were having problems to get a permission to build anything simple, but you see trucks and trucks of concrete blocks and wooden material every day. All these splavs or the floating boats are bringing and constructing, and this is mafia. Nobody can tell them, no, you cannot bring a truck with concrete block. I go there for a walk, and every day you see new and new building sites and nobody touches them because they are organized and connected. So the reason for selecting that one, and even there's a lot of, you see the Puszcze Park go in August, it's like Sahara. The grass is not irrigated, there's no water, and the trees are dying, and so and people walk there, there is no toilet, there is no bench to sit, and there is no shade, and people are bicycling, and there is no shade for bike. So there's a lot of need to improve even that, which we think is ideal. It's not. There's a lot, and then we want to use this example, people see it, and replicate it everywhere, including Borca, including Gadžin Han, including Surdulica, everywhere. Surdulica, Gadžin Han, Vladičin Han. They are building a wastewater treatment plant which costs 3 times more, by goodness knows, international money, which could be built 3 times cheaper and much better. But they say.
By the way, I think that Elena, maybe I don't want to take attention from Buenos Aires, but I think that maybe you should switch focus and come and do your research in Serbia, because as you can see, there's plenty of material, and plus it's closer.
Already competent people here. But can I say, can I do an anthropological comment? It may say like, it might sound like a sidetrack, but it isn't. I'd like to be the anthropologist and say that water, in most cultures of the world, has got a personhood. Water is personified among the elements of nature which constitute animist religions, for example. Animism attributes life and thought to stones, to the wind, to the ocean. But water, especially water conveyed in rivers. You say this water of money is flowing, which is a dystopic view of the animation of water. And the water's got the capability of mobilizing a lot, because water changes colors, shape, direction, intensity, thickness, whatever quality, right? So, and it's quite often personified with a woman deity, right? In most, say in Indian cultures, for example, water is holy, and if you pollute the water, then you have to apologize to water for having done bad treatment, as if there was making a damage on a physical body. So this is a very unifying thought. Then,
there are also rivers that have rights, like people, like Wanganui in New Zealand,
exactly, and
or
also
in India, in South America.
And then I'd like to ask a question. Can I? Well, I have many questions for the colleagues, but
we can then go downstairs and have a coffee and more relaxed.
But this one is important. Just one.
Yes, of course.
I'll ask it now. About the scale of the action, okay? What I spoke about was a small scale example, actually. Despite Buenos Aires is a big place, but the island is only a...
Sorry about this.
It's on the table. It's on the table.
No, this is another one. Oh. I have 2. This is a secret one.
It's not so secret, because everybody can hear it. Right, so the important there was the fact that time took its important part. So the wilderness was reconstructed in the front of the city because nobody could take care of it. Not even the very more aggressive builders and urban developers. They didn't have the money for some time in Argentina. And all of this long process produced a small-scale example, a natural park, a beautiful park, but in the city. So do you think, do we all think, how do we think about the relevance of a small-scale example? I spent 20 minutes and even more now to speak about this. Okay, it's interesting for the people, for the Porteños. But do we need to approach from a top-down, well, no, from a large scale, horizontal, say the European projects, the fight to corruption, or do you think that the small virtuous example which just develop a 10 meters long beautiful environment make any sense?
Both.
Or they are
both.
tests? So.
Both. It has to be a combination of the bottom-up and top-down.
No, but top-down and bottom-up is not, I use this
small
extension,
scale,
but this is wrong. It's the
exactly.
scale.
You're right. You've seen in one of these, probably.
No, I'll tell you why. Can I say? Because the bigger powers tend to allow the small-scale example. Because, okay, so you concentrate your energy there, you solve your local problem, you have your 10 meters, 100 meters, pleasant, as some of the examples that Niels brought, I think. I know some of these places, not all of them. They are locally working, apparently pleasant places. But if you zoom out and see the larger picture, there are no solutions. So I've got a controversial feeling, because of course I like the engagement which solve a local problem. But then it could be like, okay, I'm a politician, say you really solve your local problems and fight there, concentrate on there, make a small picture there, and everybody else is going exactly as if the virtuous case.
You're quite right by placing the importance of these small-scale examples. That's what we are doing. Our case, it will be in Hotel only 100 by 100 meters, and it's a huge park. In Denmark, it's just few houses. In Poland, it's also. So we are having these small examples, but they are not used to solve that local problem of that place. We are using that place to demonstrate how things work, how the principles work, collect the data, and demonstrate, then teach everybody, including planners and local people and politicians and decision makers and businesses and so on. We have a list of 17, whatever, different groups of stakeholders, how things should be done and extrapolated. So we have this small scale, and we have then extrapolation sites in these countries, in these cities, where we'll demonstrate what we learned here. There's many things we don't even yet know yet. And then the extrapolation to deep figures. Philadelphia is an excellent example in America, but it takes years, 23 years. They started with solving these small, sustainable urban drainage systems. Every pocket place. And they worked with people, they worked with the job creation, this small corner shop for people, drug addicts and alcoholic people. And they created Philadelphia after 20 years, just solving one problem. Stone drainage is a completely different city. It is a city which made 23,000 jobs, mainly for the social problematic people, drug addicts and alcoholic people and people with jobless, homeless, and so on. And that it works, but it takes patience, it takes good examples, it takes time, and takes money. And we are also thinking, who will give this money? This corrupt system will not put money in there. But we are trying to create such an example that will be attractive for the people to invest in green businesses, in green economy, in this building houses different.
I want to have your vision. Can I mention Rosa Bredotti, which is a feminist scholar, one of the most prominent feminist scholars in Europe. She now is in the Netherlands, in Utrecht. And Rosa Bredotti says, she used to say this in Berlin when, well, she says, she's written that capitalism eats up, devours, okay, the goods of activism, making it its own, as if it was a sort of self-cure. So we have to be engaged, we have to be activists, of course, but we also have not to be naive and believe that we are just providing good examples. You are right, you are totally right, 100% right, 200% right. We have to provide good examples, but the good examples shouldn't be kind of boomeranged against us, like, you see, it's solvable. You see, they done it. There should be more evil, wicked activists, I think.
You have a question?
No, I just put thumbs up.
Ah, thumbs up. Okay, so my suggestion is that we take this discussion downstairs with the coffee in a shade. If no one else has questions or comments from the online audience.
But
and
we abandon Niels then.
Or Neil, of course, he's also online. So if someone has a comment or question,
somebody
please.
mentioned that we should ask Neil why the Croatian young graduate people and intellectuals are going to Ireland first and then find a job somewhere else in Europe. I don't know, but I see thousands. I see many of them, my friends' children. They stop in London for one day and they go to Ireland. I don't know why. Neil, do you have a clue?
Well, it's not for cost of living anyway. And in Northern Ireland, we're on the other side of the border. We left Europe at the same time as London as well. So I'm not quite sure what it is. You know, it definitely has been one of the most unaffordable parts. But just in relation to the sort of the nature-based solutions and the example that Cheddo was talking about in Philadelphia, a lot of the biophilic cities that joined this network about 20 years ago did do for very practical reasons. You know, places like Portland, similar to Belfast, very much creaking, 100-year-old sewerage infrastructure. Looking at how we can plumb with plants, looking at sustainable urban drainage is a very pragmatic way of taking pressure off of systems that are really struggling, economically difficult to fund. And even thinking about the benefits of small projects. You know, if you go to many cities around the world where they've introduced things like afforestation programs, you can look at open source data and see the economic benefits of individual trees. You know, as a way of, I'm not a huge fan of natural capital, but sometimes it can convince more cynical politicians of the benefits of trees for air pollution, for drainage reasons as well. So sometimes maybe it is that sort of importance of the demonstration project in the smaller examples and trying to speak a language that maybe politicians may buy. That's my one point. I'm not quite sure. I was down in Dublin a couple of nights ago. Very large Brazilian population. Didn't see too many Croatians, Cheddo.
They are mainly in Cork. I don't know why Cork.
Okay.
But this is first destination. They go to Split from Pula, from anywhere. They end up in Cork, and then from there they disseminate to the rest of Europe and rest of Ireland. I don't know why Cork.
Quite different climate in Cork, you know, subtropical climate.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks. Anyone, or can we wrap up? What's that blue line there?
Repetiko je postao most između Turske I Grčke I čini veliki deo
Hello, can you hear me?
Miloš, we can hear someone in Serbian speaking.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Hello. First of all, thank you for this wonderful workshop with so many of important insights into how to incorporate both activism and understanding of our natural environment into contemporary politics. I was on a class during this workshop, so I'm very sorry. I'll have to come back on something that I heard at the very beginning. And I would like to, in a way, strengthen the need that I've heard along these lines to enhance this anthropological view of water in a very specific way. And this way is to try to change a narrative of what water is for the very inhabitants who, along the line of various ways of commoditizing water, start to believe that water is a way of, let's say, scenography in a city, instead of being a source of myriad activities among which political are only a part of. So why I'm saying this, as I'm in a way sourcing my personal childhood memories. I was growing up very near the Sava River in Belgrade, and we never ever had Sava River as a place on our mental map as children playing and doing whatever children do in their neighborhoods. So slowly, this narrative is changing due to changes on the Sava River in Belgrade as well. So by focusing on many different aspects of water in urban environment might provide, we perhaps could also change the whole perspective. And once again, I would like to thank very much everyone in organizing this wonderful conference. And without taking much of your time, thank you again for listening to my small remarks.
Thank you, Miloš.
Yeah, very important.
Very important, Elena said very important.
Yeah, in fact, I had a question for Niels, but I'll ask him.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you for listening. Thank you for speaking and showing us everything that you showed. So how things should be done, how things cannot be done, what is problematic in Serbia, especially because, as Elena said, I mean, of course, all these examples that Neil and Elena provided are extremely important and show us actually that we in Serbia do share this context with other locations, and that this political system and also, as Miloš said and Elena, this anthropological perspective can somehow show us the bigger picture and how the whole problematic called waterscapes in general in urban context can be approached. But yeah, the road is long, and we'll just we will list priorities.
Yeah, list the priorities and
step one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.